Hi, it's Katrina. Today we'll be diving into some mysterious discoveries that will keep you on your toes. From secrets buried beneath the Giza Plateau in Egypt to a chilling Nazi murder mystery and a megastructure in space, we've got it all. The Giza Staircase. There is something hidden underneath Giza that they aren't telling us about. There is even a way down to this hidden place, but nobody's allowed near it. A staircase has been found leading down into the depths of the desert. It's not a recent discovery, though. It's only recently come to the public's attention. The mystery staircase has been known about by top Egyptian authorities for years. It's in a hidden area of the Giza Plateau where tourists are not authorized to visit. Supposedly, the whole area is a military training base, but there doesn't appear to be any military training happening. The zone is forbidden, sort of like how there are forbidden zones in the Grand Canyon or Area 51. There are no good sources on this mystery staircase. The images of it have appeared online with vague details about its purpose, location, and history. It was supposedly excavated years ago. Then, whatever was found freaked out the Egyptians enough that they forbade anyone from exploring it further. The photographs show a staircase plunging straight through the limestone rock of the Giza Plateau. But there aren't any photographs of the inside of the staircase, and certainly not at the bottom. Whoever took these pictures, assuming the photos are real, didn't dare walk down the stairs into the dark below the pyramids. For now, you and I can only speculate. What do you think could be hiding at the bottom of the staircase? Do you have any ideas or any other information to add? If you do, please share in the comments below. Mysterious bodies in Hitler's secret lair. A grim and disturbing discovery has been made in a Nazi fortress. 5 mystery bodies were found hidden underneath the floors of Hitler's secret lair. I'm not sure if I should put a trigger warning here or not, but this discovery is going to make your skin crawl. Amateur archaeologists were looking for artifacts in one of the most notorious abandoned buildings in the world when they made a shocking find. There were 5 decaying bodies under the floorboards. To make things even stranger, their hands and feet were missing. They were obviously the victims of murder. I bet you didn't realize this was going to turn into an episode of true crime. The site where the amateur archaeologists were searching was in Poland. They were looking through the infamous villa that belonged to Hermann Göring, leader of the Nazi Party and Hitler's designated successor. The villa was inside Hitler's secret military headquarters, known as the Wolf's Lair. It was like Hitler's fortress of solitude during the war. After the failed assassination attempt on Hitler in 1944, the Wolf's Lair was deserted. Then, at the end of World War II, as the Germans retreated, the lair was left in shambles, almost completely destroyed. For the next 50 years, the Wolf's Lair was forbidden for anyone to enter. It was a dangerous ruin that had been partially blown up by the Nazis and then even more damaged by the Soviets. In fact, on the day that the Soviets liberated the notorious Auschwitz concentration camp, they captured the Wolf's Lair and brought it under their control. What many people forget is that the Soviet Union didn't save Poland out of the kindness in their hearts. They took over Poland. Poland was forced to become a communist puppet of the Soviet Union up until the collapse of the USSR in the 1990s. It was only after the collapse that people were finally allowed inside the ruins of the Wolf's Lair. That's where the Latebra Foundation comes in. Their archaeologists have been investigating the abandoned fortress with official permission for years. Normally, they find pieces of war memorabilia, which are then preserved accordingly. They don't take Nazi treasure home with them. If anything, it gets turned over to a museum for a proper catalog. The researchers mostly focused on the Wolf's Lair itself, the place where Hitler held his meetings. They found uniform buttons, tools, and pieces of machinery. Recently, they switched up their tactics. The team left the lair alone and started digging through Göring's villa. The villa is one out of 200 buildings scattered across the 617-acre compound. That was when they found the unthinkable. A small group with the Latebra Foundation found 5 mutilated bodies. Collect yourself and get ready. I'll tell you the rest of this disturbing tale in a bit. Giant structures in space. There is some seriously strange stuff going on in space. Scientists keep finding giant structures billions of light years away from our planet. The most recent discovery is being called the Big Ring. It's a structure that scientists say is causing problems for the way the principles of cosmology are understood. They don't know what the colossal structure found 9.2 billion light-years away is. All they can say for certain is that it's huge, with a diameter of 1.3 billion light-years. I don't even know how to put that into a human perspective. This thing has a diameter that's more than a billion light-years. You can't compare that to elephants or Boeing 747s. Scientists said that if the Big Ring was visible to the naked eye, it would take up an area of the sky equivalent to 15 moons. I'm not saying it's the size of 15 moons because that's not even close. I'm saying that if you could see it, that's how much of the sky it would blot out. The unusual discovery was revealed by PhD student Alexia Lopez. It wasn't the first time she discovered an unusual anomaly either. 2 years before, she discovered what's known as the Giant Arc. The Giant Arc is also a megastructure in space, only it's even bigger. It's twice the size of the Big Ring at 3.3 billion light-years across. Okay, so what are these things? Scientists are calling them megastructures. Does that mean they're artificial? Are they humongous batteries built by aliens to harvest the energy of the stars? Even the experts don't know, and that might be the scariest part. They think the structures are most likely made up of remnants of energy and material from when the universe was a baby, materials like entire galaxies. Only this is causing a problem because the structures are so big that they surpass the theoretical size limit of any cosmic structure. They are breaking the rules humans have made for the physics of space. The incredible discovery of the Big Ring goes to show how little humanity really understands of the bigger picture. That's a little unsettling, don't you think? And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a huge thank you to The Michael for the generous super thanks. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with us. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this. The alien fish with an underbite. Let's take a little break from our scheduled programming to check out an alien fish. Scientists have found a toothy fish with a mismatched jaw from 365 million years ago. The fish had one of the most extreme underbites of any animal ever. The fish is such a freak, and I say that in the best way possible, that scientists named it Alienacanthus. The first word in its name is alien. Its fossil was found in Poland in 1957. At first, researchers thought it had a long set of fin spines, but a new analysis from modern scientists showed that the spines were no spines at all, but rather its lower jaw. The fish's lower jaw sticks out in front of its body like a javelin. Its lower jaw was twice the size of its skull. To put that into perspective, it would be like if your bottom jaw extended a full head length in front of your face. You'd be able to use your mouth like an extra pocket to keep your wallet and keys in. What scientists would like to know is why? What was the point of it? To understand, you need to go way back in time. The freaky fish lived during the Devonian era. It was a type of placoderm, one of the first animals in the world to have jaws. It was also covered in armor, because that was just the way fish rolled back then. Unlike pretty much every other placoderm, Alienacanthus's upper jaw could move independently of its skull. It had a jaw mechanism entirely unique to itself, likely to accommodate its ridiculously long lower jaw. In the end, this weird evolutionary trait must not have been very useful, or it would still be around. An overbite of this magnitude hasn't been seen in eons. Ancient nautical technology. Archaeologists have found a seriously old boat. The boat is so ancient that it's hardly even recognizable as a seafaring vessel. It's technically a canoe, one that was hollowed out of a tree trunk 7,300 years ago. It looks like ancient humans had taken to the seas much earlier than scientists previously thought. The ancient canoe is an amazing piece of early technology, one that was used long before the Romans and Carthaginians fought naval battles for supremacy over the Mediterranean. This canoe was used to navigate the sea when most people still lived in caves. But there is more to the mystery than just the origin of the boat. Scientists from the Spanish National Research Council think the canoe could help answer questions regarding the Neolithic migration 12,000 years ago. I'm going to get a little prehistoric, so bear with me for a second. The Neolithic era began in the Near East in the year 10,000 BC, give or take a few centuries. The dawn of civilization occurred almost simultaneously in Mesopotamia, China, Peru, India, and Egypt around 5,000 years ago. Long before that, that, the dawn of human society had already happened in the Near East with the first farmers. It's just that it took them 7,000 years to form the complex civilizations of the Indus Valley and Sumer. Great, now you're caught up on the advancement of human civilization. It's also worth noting that the Neolithic era began around the same time the biblical flood occurred. So what does an ancient canoe have to do with all of this history? Because farming communities started in the Near East but rapidly spread across Europe and North Africa. By 5400 BC, farming had reached the coast of Portugal. Scientists have always wondered how farming communities spread so effectively. They did it with canoes. This ancient vessel isn't the only one that's ever been found. Dr. Juan Gibaja recently examined 5 of these canoes, all of them dating from around 5700 BC. The canoes were discovered on the edge of an abandoned Neolithic village called La Marmota. In antiquity, the village had stood on the edge of a lake. Now it's a small ruin near Rome. I won't bore you with the specifics of the construction techniques, the types of wood used, or the way the ropes were fastened to the sails. What I will say is that using nothing but stone tools, Neolithic people made great advancements in nautical technology. They used fleets of canoes to spread humanity as far as the water would take them. Secrets of the Extinction. 370 million years ago was an event even worse than the flood in the Bible. It was like the flood, only with a lot more fire and brimstone. A mass extinction event saw the amazing biodiversity of the Devonian era come to a horrific end. For years, scientists have been trying to find the cause of one of the worst catastrophes the planet has ever seen. A recent study may have partly solved the mystery. Their research showed the Devonian extinction was a two-pronged nightmare. Volcanic activity teamed up with deoxygenation to wipe out life. The scary thing is that it could happen again, as soon as 5 minutes from now. I wish I could take you back in time to witness the planet 370 million years ago. The oceans were full of life, and the very first seed-bearing plants had created vast forests across the massive continents of Gondwana and Laurussia. It would have been a wild place to explore. All of those plants sound like they would have been a good thing, but new research suggests otherwise. Scientists found that the surge in plant life was devastating for marine life. Land plants flushed so much excess nutrients into the oceans that the oceans ran out of oxygen. What happens when you run out of oxygen? That's right, you can't breathe. It's the same for fish and other sea life. There's no oxygen, they die. What happened at the end of the Devonian was that the oceans ran out of oxygen at the same time volcanoes erupted across the globe and destroyed terrestrial life. The authors of the new study said that what humans are doing now could recreate this horrible scenario. Things like fertilizer being spilled into the ocean and the heating of fossil fuels could leave the 7 seas totally barren of life. And don't even get me started on what could happen if there is an apocalypse-level volcanic eruption. The bodies under the floorboards. When the researchers with the La Tebra Foundation found the bodies under the Nazi Göring's villa, they immediately called the police. The archaeologists thought maybe the bodies had been left underneath the floorboards in the decades after the Third Reich fell. They could have been killed during the Soviet occupation of Poland. One member of the research team, Dominic, told Reuters they didn't know what they were dealing with. They thought the bodies could have come from an occult ritual, one that was held in the wolf's lair after the war. The case has already been closed by police. There was a forensic examination, and then the case was closed without any conclusive answers. But the big question is, who were the 5 people? According to the medical examiner, they died before the war even started. The rotting bodies were buried beneath Göring's villa between 1918 and 1939. That means after World War I, but before World War II. It's possible they were buried on the site before the wolf's lair was even built. The compound wasn't constructed until 1941. If that's true, it's even more disturbing. The skeletons were found buried just a few inches below the surface next to some plumbing pipes. When the villa was being built, there is no way the plumbers hadn't stumbled upon the fresh bodies, but they just left them there. Why would they just leave them there? Was it too much work to move them? The most logical explanation is a ritual. The corpses may have been placed at the building site as a good luck charm. People did this in ancient times. They did it in the Middle Ages and way back in the days of biblical gods like Molech and Dagon. These 5 people, 3 adults and 2 children, could have been sacrificed. Then they may have been buried as offerings to the pagan gods when Hitler built his base. It fits perfectly with the bizarre Nazi obsession with all things pagan and occult. The golden spirals. Archaeologists are struggling to understand some weird golden spirals they found. The spirals look like gold metal shavings, but appear to serve no purpose. The weird spirals were found in a field near the small Danish town of Boislunde, which happens to be on the island of Zealand. While a farmer was harvesting his crops, he unexpectedly discovered 2,000 very delicate curls of gold. They sort of look like golden locks, like they were plucked straight from Goldilocks herself. Or maybe they look like mac and cheese to you. Only these aren't noodles or magical hair, they are metal. Metal that has been pounded very thin and altogether weighing not even half a pound. These gold spirals are very old. Curator Flemming Kohl from the National Museum of Denmark thinks they were made 2,900 years ago. Fleming suggested they were attached to cords as part of a hat. They may have also been braided into somebody's hair, or they could have been embroidered onto somebody's suit. Fleming said his personal belief is that they were either part of a priest's costume or a king's headwear. Unfortunately, this is one of those mysteries that will likely never be solved. The golden spirals were uncovered in one huge lump with a box-shaped imprint. They had been in a wooden box lined with fur, but the box and the fur have long since decayed and disappeared. The site that once stood on the farmer's field most likely held ritual significance. People could have been sacrificed here, artifacts could have been offered to the gods, but now it's just a field for crops. Cold snaps and plagues. Scientists recently reconstructed temperature and rainfall records from a very long time ago. Isn't it crazy that the weatherman can't get the forecast right, but scientists can see how much it rained during the Roman Empire? Something doesn't add up. Researchers Karen Zonneveld and Kyle Harper extracted sediment cores from the Italian coast and analyzed them. They were able to learn exactly how much rain was falling from 200 BC until 600 AD. They were able to piece together climate conditions in Italy for that whole 800-year period. What they discovered is a bizarre connection between the weather and super-spreading plague events. You must have known this was going to take a weird turn. It turns out cold weather could be responsible for some of the worst outbreaks of infectious diseases in recorded history. Karen and Kyle found an association between periods of abrupt cold and epidemics, including some devastating episodes you might remember from history class. The Antonine Plague ravaged the Roman Empire. When their armies returned from conquests in Western Asia, they brought disease with them. Some scientists think the plague was measles or smallpox. However, this might not be the case. It may have just been a horrible sickness that destroyed the empire. In 169 AD, Roman Emperor Lucius Verus died from the plague, but that was hardly the tip of the iceberg. Roman historian Cassius Dio said up to 2,000 people in Rome were dying every single day. The sickness had a 25% fatality rate. By the time it was over, 10 million people were dead. The Roman army was in shambles, and 10% of the empire was in the grave. The Antonine Plague happened at the highest point of Rome's influence. Many historians agree it was this plague that hastened the fall of Rome. It's tough to lose 10% of your population and a massive portion of your army and keep dominion over the whole world. There was a sudden cold spell just as the Antonine Plague broke out. The same thing happened when the plague of Justinian emerged. The moral of the story is that cold equals plague. A pyramid mystery. In May of 2024, just this year, yet another unexplained mystery of Egypt's Great Pyramid was revealed. Archaeologists detected an anomaly near the Pyramid of Khufu that could point to a previously undiscovered tomb. Unlike the staircase, this new discovery has made headlines around the world. Mainstream scientists used ground-penetrating radar near the pyramids of Giza to look at what's happening under the ground. The team consisted of Japanese and Egyptian scientists. They even published their discoveries in the scientific journal Archaeological Prospection. Here's what they discovered. A structure shaped like an L is about 33 feet beneath the desert sands. Professor Motoyuki Sato from Tohoku University wrote that the anomaly appears to be a combination of a shallow structure connected to a deeper structure. This means it could be a shaft connected to a tomb. And here's where it is. That red rectangle is the exploration zone. 33 feet beneath that is the anomaly. The mystery tomb is buried in the actual shadow of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The image is thanks to the journal Archaeological Prospection. How crazy is all this? A potential tomb is buried underneath this flat piece of sand. Here's another image from the journal. The anomaly is inside that red square. The red square is in a blank spot within the Western Cemetery, where many members of the extended Egyptian royal family were buried. That huge blank area, matching perfectly with the anomaly, cannot be a coincidence. Could this be the fourth missing pyramid? Right now, it's a matter of actually getting down to the anomaly, to that L-shaped structure. It could take years before scientists learn what's hiding inside. They may never even get permission to dig next to the pyramid, so this anomaly could remain an unsolved mystery forever, but hopefully not. The Satan Curse Tablet. Everyone has wanted a little bit of revenge at some point. At least a little. Just a smidgen of vengeance. In the 15th century, the way to seek vengeance was by using curse tablets, like the one just found during an archaeological dig in Rostock, Germany. Researchers found a lead tablet invoking the name of Beelzebub to bring doom upon two individuals named Taleke and Henrik. This is totally crazy. People have been using curse tablets since the days of Babylon. They invoked the names of all kinds of pagan gods. But in the Middle Ages, to use the name of Beelzebub was unheard of. Whoever wrote this tablet was calling out to Satan to smite his enemies. This was the kind of thing that could easily get you burned at the stake for witchcraft. Whatever wrong Taleke and Henrik were responsible for, it must have been serious. Archaeologists unfurled the lead tablet and found a cryptic Gothic message scrawled across it. Lead researcher Jorg Ansorg said the tablet was placed at the bottom of the toilet. Sounds disgusting, and it kinda is. But it was also practical. People couldn't just leave their curses lying around for anyone to find. They would typically throw them into toilets so that they remained hidden forever. And it worked. Nobody found this curse for 500 years. I can only wonder what became of Taleke and Henrik. Did the devil get them? The Royal Tombs of Cyprus. An expedition led by Swedish scientists has hit the motherlode in Cyprus. They discovered a series of mysterious underground chambers using magnetometry. After they identified the chambers, they started digging. Soon, they broke into forgotten tombs filled to the brim with treasure. This was an amazing discovery in a very unusual place. The team of scientists from the University of Gothenburg excavated an area outside the Bronze Age trading city of Hala Sultan Teke, which happens to be home to some mysteries of its own. Hala Sultan Teke is on the southern coast of Cyprus. In the ancient city stands one of the most important Muslim shrines in the world. Legend has it the shrine was built as the final resting place for Haram. For those not up to date on their Islamic lore, Haram was the paternal aunt of the Prophet Muhammad. Long before Hala Sultan Teke was a city, the area was home to a copper trading hub in 1500 BC. The mysterious tombs likely belonged to a group of elite businessmen, or kings. They were the men who controlled the bulk of copper production on Cyprus. That's a lot to digest in just a few minutes, and I haven't even gotten to the treasure yet. The tombs wouldn't be nearly as impressive if not for the more than 500 grave goods recovered. Not just trinkets and broken pieces of pottery, but quality artifacts. I'm talking about gems, high-quality ceramics, pieces of ivory, jewelry, a bronze mirror, ceramic toys, and goods from faraway lands. All evidence points to a major trading network centering on this ancient city of copper. Researchers identified gold and ivory from Egypt. They found blue lapis lazuli, red carnelian, and turquoise mined from places like Afghanistan and India. There were even bits of amber that had come from the Baltic region in Europe. As for the ceramics, they were made in Greece, Turkey, and Palestine. The vast amount of wealth discovered in these newly opened tombs is phenomenal. Even the skeletons were wearing fancy jewelry, specifically diadems. Most of the jewelry appears to have been made in Egypt during the reigns of Pharaoh Thutmose III, Akhenaten, and Queen Nefertiti. Did climate change create a mysterious civilization 5,000 years ago? It was over 20 years ago that archaeologists in Peru discovered something unbelievable in the Norte Chico region. In the dry and barren valleys along the west coast, near the beginning of the Andes Mountains, researchers found massive artificial mounds built with stone and dirt. All these years later, scientists are still struggling to make sense of these mystery mounds. They are 5,000 years old, predating the Maya by 1,000 years. The mounds were built before the pyramids. They were built 4,500 years before the rise of the Inca. The mounds appear to have been made by the first complex civilization in the Americas. That's an impressive title to have. But who were these ancient builders? Why did they construct pyramid-shaped mounds hundreds of feet tall? The more you learn about this mystery civilization, the more unanswered questions that come up. One of the big things that scientists have contemplated is why they built things in the Norte Chico region. It's a place that's about as dead as it gets. The land is as dry as the sun, which is pretty dry. There are almost no water sources. The only greenery is in the mirage you see when you start dying from heat exhaustion. There's one more thing I need to mention about the towering mounds in Norte Chico. Archaeologists couldn't attribute them to any previously known civilization, but they also couldn't find any other examples of architecture associated with them. New information has come to light that could explain at least part of the mystery. Scientists found seashells and fish bones in Norte Chico. Not prehistoric seashells, but ones that were fairly recent. Suddenly, a theory was born. 5,000 years ago, a civilization of fishermen thrived along the coastline of Peru about 10 miles from Norte Chico's mounds. Then something changed with the climate. It was likely a persistent El Niño weather system. Heavy rains and extreme ocean temperatures ruined the bountiful fishing. Suddenly there were hurricanes, floods, and it became too dangerous to live on the coast. This was how seashells got pushed into the desert, by floods. The fishermen had no choice but to abandon their coastal homes and move inland. They started building mounds. They dug underground houses and developed a sophisticated government and survived for another 1,000 years. Where they went and why they moved again, nobody can say. The nameless mound builders likely suffered another disaster and moved to find more fertile ground. They abandoned their mounds and set off to parts unknown. The Jar of Holes. A very unusual jar was found broken into pieces in a storage room at Canada's Museum of Ontario Archaeology. 180 fragments were painstakingly put together like trying to fix a shattered plate. When the project was complete, archaeologists sat back and scratched their heads. The jar, made during the days of the Roman Empire, was full of holes. Actual holes. You couldn't hold any liquid in the jar because it would come pouring out. It was more of a strainer than a jar. To make matters more mysterious, nobody knows where the jar came from. It arrived in Canada from Great Britain. The jar was supposedly found by archaeologist William Francis Grimes in the 1950s. He pulled it out of a bomb crater in London near the Mithraeum. The Mithraeum was a Roman temple dedicated to Mithra, the ancient god worshipped by the Romans as part of the Mithraic mysteries. Mithra had been adapted from the Persians, who had worshipped him first. William Grimes was the man who excavated the Mithraeum as well. The whole thing is beyond strange. A jar from a bomb crater that was built by the Romans and lost near an ancient temple dedicated to a Persian deity. There are so many moving pieces. The jar itself is a total anomaly, unlike anything that's ever been found. Some don't even think it's Roman. One theory is that the jar is 5,000 years old, originally from the Mesopotamian city of Ur. It may have accidentally arrived in the Canadian Museum in pieces. What the jar was used for and why it's full of holes? Well, that's a mystery that remains unsolved. Any guesses? Let me know in the comments. And if you have more time, be sure to stick around for an older video you might have missed. Badger Archeologist. A massive trove of treasure was discovered in northwest Spain, and it consists of over 200 coins from the Roman era. But what's far more fascinating than the coins themselves is the fact that they weren't found by archaeologists. They weren't even found by humans. It was a single hungry badger digging for food that stumbled upon this incredible discovery by accident. January of 2021 was a rough year for Spain. They were hit by a rare snowstorm, the most intense in the last half-century. During the storm, a confused badger had to dig around for food, searching for its typical diet of berries, insects, and worms. Rather than finding something to eat, it found a small hidden treasure of metal discs. By the time archaeologists were made aware of the find, the coins had already been dispersed over the floor of a cave. They then did their own excavation, finding a total of 209 coins from between the 3rd and 5th century. This was the late Roman era, just before the final collapse. The coins came from as far as Constantinople, likely passing through Rome, into Lyon in France, and then to Spain. How in the world they ended up buried at the entrance to a cave is a total mystery. Temple of the Water Cult. In Peru, archaeologists have excavated a megalithic temple from 3,000 years ago. They say the temple was used by a water cult who practiced fertility rituals inside its walls. The temple was found at Huaca el Toro in the Zana Valley. It's the very first massive temple made from stones that's ever been found in the valley. Because of this, researchers don't know a whole lot about the people who made it, but what they believe is that the residents of the temple literally worshipped water. They probably built the temple in the valley, close to where two ancient rivers connect, as a type of territorial symbolism. And here's where things get really impressive. The temple was constructed using huge stones moved into the valley from a mountain about 2 miles away. While that distance might not seem like much to us, it was a huge distance to drag stones that weighed several tons. Even more interesting is that the construction went on over 3 distinct time periods. The initial construction was in 1500 BC, with the foundation and first stones being laid. Then, between 800 and 400 BC, the megalithic temple itself was erected by the Chavan people, a pre-Inca civilization. Then, between 400 and 250 BC, circular columns were added, a huge roof was installed, and the work was complete. Almost immediately after, the temple was abandoned. Seemingly, no one used the structure again for another 1,300 years, until the Chumi culture showed up and made use of it as a burial ground. Revolutionary War battlefield. In South Carolina, archaeologists have discovered the site of the Battle of Tar Bluff. The battle was fought in August of 1782, when America was still in its infancy. It's mainly remembered today as the place where John Lawrence, friend of George Washington and Alexander Hamilton, was killed in battle. Lawrence and 140 infantrymen were trying to secure part of the Combahee River when the British ambushed them. The Americans had been getting annoyed by the British soldiers looting their nearby farms and were hoping to put an end to it. Instead, Lawrence and his men were killed. Mike Yiannopoulos with the South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust pinpointed the exact location of the battlefield using GPS technology and metal detectors. They then started digging and have since found all kinds of amazing wartime artifacts. They've discovered an Irish halfpenny from 1775, plenty of British grape shot, musket balls, and even a fully intact bayonet. Mysterious symbols. In the desert of Qatar, there are mysterious symbols carved into soft rock, and researchers remain unsure of their meaning. These symbols can be found on the northeastern coast of the country in the sand of the barren desert. Centuries ago, people used limestone outcrops as blank canvases to craft symbols, motifs, and other bizarre objects. In total, archaeologists have identified at least 900 rock carvings at the site of Al-Jassasiyya, but identifying and understanding are two totally different things. According to Ferhan Sakal, head of the excavations at Qatar museums, the carvings found here are unique and unlike any found anywhere else in the world. They show a high degree of creativity and abstract thinking, something not typically seen in other prehistoric works of art. Normally, people carved things that they saw into the rock. Some Native Americans drew animals, themselves, hunting parties, and other recognizable representations of daily life. But here, the symbols and designs are abstract and confusing. Some experts believe the carvings may have been used for divination. There are dozens of configurations of small holes, parallel lines, and other geometric features that don't seem to mean anything, at least not to us. Experts don't even know how old the rock art is because it's been too challenging to date.
The best hypothesis is that people were carving strange symbols into the rocks here from sometime between the Neolithic days to the more recent Islamic times. Ancient parasites. When researchers were studying the contents of an ancient cesspit beneath a toilet in Jerusalem, they uncovered the remains of intestinal parasite eggs. The eggs were probably the result of poor sanitary conditions. But the reason the discovery is so interesting is that this was no ordinary toilet they were investigating. It came from the garden of a luxury mansion from the 7th century BC. 2,700 years ago, this stone toilet was the epitome of luxury. The only reason the eggs survived long enough for us to study them is that the cesspit was truly disgusting. Buried underground and full of refuse, the parasite eggs remained relatively preserved. The eggs would have hatched into intestinal worms that could cause all kinds of nasty symptoms from abdominal pain to diarrhea. Intestinal worms were very dangerous for children, as they often led to malnutrition and even death. Previously, researchers thought unsanitary toilet conditions may have only been a problem for the poor of that time. However, since these parasites were found in such a luxurious estate, it seems they were also a problem for the rich and the powerful. Even kings and rulers had poor sanitary conditions that led to their drinking water being contaminated by fecal matter. It also didn't help that at the time, no one knew they were supposed to wash their hands, and practices such as using feces to fertilize crops and urine to brush your teeth were pretty common. The salt mines of Garmsar. The salt mines of Garmsar extend like the winding tunnels of hell beneath the earth. There are over 92 separate salt mines beneath the city in the Semnan province of Iran, with some still in use today. But some are old, having been carved out long ago by the inhabitants of the region. The salt mines here are unique because they yield salt of over 98% purity. They are also really gorgeous. The salt mines, the ones that are abandoned, are so big you could drive a double-decker bus through them. The result of removing salt for so many years is huge underground caverns that look like they could house a race of subterranean cave people. The walls are smooth as sand. There are massive columns that keep the roof from collapsing, and they even have medicinal purposes. Locals believe the salt mines can be used to cure and treat diseases. It's believed that by breathing the air inside the salty underground chambers, one can heal themselves of any respiratory ailment. This makes the mines not only popular with tourists, but also with locals who are looking to breathe a bit better. Some of these salt mines have even been flooded and require small boats to explore. Do you believe in the healing power of salt? Let me know in the comments below. Bronze Age Sauna. On Orkney in Scotland, archaeologists have uncovered an extraordinarily rare sauna from the Bronze Age. It was one of over 30 different buildings and structures uncovered during the most recent dig on Orkney, with the structures dating from between 4000 to 1000 BC. That means they were built by people living in the region between 6,000 and 3,000 years ago. The sauna was described by archaeologists as being in remarkable condition for how old it is. They've even put forth some explanations as to what the ancient people may have used it for. It could have been constructed specifically for ritual ceremonies. It may also have been a special building reserved for women while giving birth. Thirdly, the ancient sauna or steam house could have been a depository for bodies where they were taken to be purified in steam before being buried. The structure itself consists of a fireplace, a water tank, and a pile of burnt stones. It also had several different cells attached to it so that multiple people could use the sauna at the same time. The water tank was actually enormous, installed at the central part of the structure to produce boiling water and steam to circulate through all the adjacent cells. It's amazing that even 6,000 years ago, our ancient ancestors had figured out how to relax in style. Although archaeologists theorize this discovery is evidence of some kind of birthing house or ritual structure, it may have just been an ordinary sauna used for rest and relaxation. Aztec Sacrifices. A treasure trove of Aztec war sacrifices has been discovered in Mexico City. Some of these treasures include a statue of a jaguar dressed as a warrior, flint knives decorated with pearls, and even the body of a young child dressed to look like an Aztec god of war. Experts believe these sacrificial offerings were deposited hundreds of years ago by Aztec priests in a ritual platform once located at the entrance to the temple. They also believe the offerings could be proof that an ancient Aztec king is buried somewhere nearby. Archaeologist Leonardo Lopez Lujan told reporters that he and his team have enormous expectations. They believe the more they dig, the more interesting objects they'll discover. The ultimate goal is to find where this mysterious king is buried, if there is indeed a secret tomb somewhere under the temple. You may even recognize the name of the temple. It's called Templo Mayor, and it's located in the heart of Mexico City, near the Zócalo Plaza. Before the Spanish conquest of Mexico in 1521, this entire area was the center of the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. Templo Mayor was a pyramid that stood over 15 stories tall, but the Spanish burned it down and built their own structures on top of it. Whatever secrets were buried before the Spanish ever arrived are still hiding beneath Mexico City's streets. Offerings like this point archaeologists in the right direction, and hopefully it's just a matter of time before they dig deep enough to uncover the secrets of the old Aztec rulers. Ancient copper workshop. In Israel's Negev desert, archaeologists have discovered a copper workshop from 6,500 years ago. Based on the evidence found here, the experts say technology for producing copper was likely an extremely close-guarded secret. In other words, the technology used to produce copper wasn't widely available and was guarded by the ruling class so that they could retain control over the ability to produce copper. It was the most impressive technology back then, and whoever controlled it held all the power. In fact, Professor Ben Yosef said no technology was more sophisticated in the entire ancient world than refining copper. The excavations here began in 2017, when the workshop was first discovered. Archaeologists found the leftover pieces of a furnace, a primitive installation of tin, a copper slag, and leftover stone tools. Even though metalworking was known 6,500 years ago, it wasn't that advanced. People still used stone tools and whatever was easiest to shape. Another interesting fact is that by looking at the isotopes of ore remnants, scientists were able to identify the exact place where the copper came from. Traders had actually brought it from Jordan, around 60 miles away, to be refined. The people who traded the raw copper to those living in the Negev desert didn't even have the technology to refine it themselves. Experts believe the procurers of the ore were the Gasulian culture, but were not nearly as technologically advanced as the people living in Israel. They got swindled out of the copper ore in trade, then those with the knowledge to turn the copper into useful tools did so. They did it without ever sharing their knowledge with anyone else, likely to maintain their importance in the region. Powerful ancient leader. A treasure from 4,000 years ago is changing history. More accurately, it's changing our interpretation of history. A trove of jewelry was uncovered in Spain, alongside the remains of a woman and a man at the archaeological site of La Almoloya. What makes this discovery so unique is that experts say the man was probably the woman's consort. They believe that the jewels belonged to her and she was a powerful local leader. If true, it could dispel gender myths that ancient Europeans did not often have female rulers. The site of La Almoloya can be found in the forest outside of Cartagena. According to National Geographic, the burial took place around the year 1700 BC. Coincidentally, other discoveries from the same time period found in Spain have already proven that women were considered adults long before men. Girls as young as 6 have been found buried with tools and weapons, while the youngest boys buried with these artifacts were much older, in their teens. What this suggests is that women may have been in significant positions of power. This particular female came from the Argaric culture and has been nicknamed by scientists the Princess of La Almoloya. No one is sure exactly what kind of political power she had, what her role was in society, or even what kind of beliefs the Argaric had. But based on the physical evidence, the people of El Argar may have been ruled by more women than men. Thanks for watching! Which of these discoveries surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye!